They say the worst thing about getting old is the silence. But let me tell you something worse. Waking up in a hospital bed to the sound of your name no longer meaning anything. The room smelled like antiseptic and loss. I blinked slowly, adjusting to the dim light. A nurse was checking my IV. "You're lucky, Mr. Harris," she said with a practiced smile. "Small stroke. You got here in time." Small stroke. Right. The ache in my chest felt like someone had dropped an engine block on it. But that wasn't what hurt most. It was what Kevin said a few days later that did. "Dad, don't worry about the house," he said while fluffing my pillow like he actually cared. "Just sign this. It's so I can manage your bills while you're recovering." I signed. With a shaky hand and a medicated mind, I signed. And just like that, I stopped being a homeowner. My name is Walter Eugene Harris. I'm 68 years old. I've lived in Modesto, California my entire life. I raised Kevin under that roof, painted every room myself, even replaced the plumbing when the city said it couldn't be done. That house was me, and now it's not. When I got out of the hospital 2 weeks later, the front door lock had been changed. My clothes were in garbage bags on the porch. And Kevin? He was inside, watching my television, sipping beer like he hadn't just exiled his father. "You don't live here anymore, Dad," he said. "It's in my name now. You signed it over, remember? Have you ever stood on the porch of your own life and felt like a stranger? I did. Right then. Right there. And I can still hear the sound the screen door made when he slammed it in my face. Before I continue this story, I want to thank the Father's Advice channel for giving me a place to speak. If you're watching, tell me where you're tuning in from. I'd like to know there are still folks out there who haven't forgotten what respect means. Because what Kevin forgot is that I may be old, but I am not dead. And he just turned a tired father into a man with nothing left to lose. What he doesn't know yet is that signing that one paper might have destroyed him, not me. The motel was $42 a night, cash only. The kind of place where the ice machine never works and the pillows smell like old cigarettes no matter how many times they wash the cases. But it had a roof. And after 13 nights in a hospital bed surrounded by beeping machines and forced politeness, that was enough. I sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing the hospital socks. My clothes were crumpled in a trash bag beside me, the ones Kevin had stuffed on the porch like garbage. I hadn't eaten all day. I opened a bag of stale crackers I found in the nightstand. Salt burned the inside of my mouth. Then I saw it. At the bottom of my hospital bag, folded into a medical brochure about post-stroke care, was the document Kevin had me sign. The deed, typed neatly in the middle. Transfer of title. Signed by me. Witnessed by a man I didn't know. Notarized by someone named Devin Clymer. My stomach turned. Kevin always had that charm, the kind that made waitresses laugh and landlords give him just one more chance. He worked jobs he couldn't keep, chased ideas he never finished, real estate license for 6 months, crypto trader for 9. Last year, he tried selling essential oils to old church ladies and got banned from 3 congregations. But I never believed he'd come for me. And the worst part? My wife Sharon would have seen it coming. She always said, "That boy has too much sugar in his mouth and vinegar in his spine." She died 5 years ago, holding my hand on a Sunday morning while the pastor read from Romans. I haven't stepped into a church since. I miss her most on nights like this, not just because I'm alone, but because if she were here, she'd have torched Kevin's backside before he even brought the pen out. I looked down at that paper again. There was a line under the notary seal. A date. The same day I was moved from ICU to a step-down bed. I remember that day. I was on pain meds so strong I thought the nurse was floating. He waited until I was too loopy to question it. That's what makes it worse. It wasn't a mistake. It was a strategy. You think you raised a son. Turns out you raised a man who waited for you to get weak so he could take your life and repaper it as his. I folded the document slowly, placed it back in the bag. Then I opened the drawer and pulled out the motel pen. Wrote one name on the pad. Devin Clymer, notary. If there's one thing I know from a life of fixing engines, wiring houses, and reading contracts before signing them, paper always leaves a trail, and Kevin just left his fingerprints on mine. Modesto's county records office is one of those places where time seems to move slower than anywhere else. The clock on the wall had stopped at 2:46. No one seemed to notice or care. I waited 40 minutes for the woman at the counter to print me a certified copy of the deed. I told her I needed to see the transfer of title dated last month. Gave her my name. She typed with one finger. When she handed me the paper, I didn't even have to read it. I recognized the line of my own trembling signature near the bottom. Transferor, Walter Eugene Harris. Transferee, Kevin James Harris. Witness, Kira Denslow. Notary, Devin Clymer. Location of signing, 4218, Melrose Lane, Modesto. My eyes locked on that address. It wasn't the hospital, wasn't a law office either. It was a residential street over near Briggsmore and Coffee, a neighborhood I hadn't been to in years. So why was the document notarized there? I folded the paper carefully, thanked the woman at the counter, and stepped back out into the heat. October in Modesto still feels like summer. The air was dry, the sun sharp, but I barely noticed. All I could see were flashbacks. Kevin, at age 6, holding up a fish with both hands, screaming, "Dad, it's bigger than my head!" Kevin, at age 9, refusing to read because the words kept dancing, until we discovered he was dyslexic. Kevin, at 13, the night I caught him smoking weed in the garage. I didn't yell. I just said, "Son, is this who you want to be?" He cried that night, hugged me, promised to do better. Promises. That's all they were. Somewhere between then and now, the boy who couldn't sleep without his Spider-Man nightlight became a man who forged a signature and changed a lock. I walked slowly down the sidewalk, past the bus stop, past the old diner where Sharon and I used to get pie after Sunday service. And I thought, maybe it wasn't just the house he stole, maybe it was everything we built inside it. That night in the motel, I looked up the address from the notary record. It was a single-story house with a red door and a mailbox shaped like a duck. I'd drive by the next day. But for now, I lay back on the hard mattress, listening to the hum of the wall AC, holding that photocopy like it was the last piece of my identity. One thing was certain now. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. Kevin didn't just lie to me. He planned this. And tomorrow, I'd find out who Kira Denslow was and why she helped my son steal my life. 4218. Melrose Lane didn't look like the kind of place where legal documents got signed. The paint was chipped, the front porch sagged a little, and there were plastic chairs in the yard that hadn't been cleaned in months. A little boy with no shirt was running through a sprinkler squealing. A woman sat on the porch smoking, staring at her phone like it owed her money. I approached slowly. "You Kira Denslow?" She looked up, squinting through the smoke. "Who's asking?" "I'm Walter Harris," I said, steady as I could. "I think you witnessed a document of mine last month, a property transfer." She shifted, tapped her cigarette on the railing. "That your son's name, Kevin?" My throat tightened. "Yes." She stood. "Look, I didn't know it was anything serious. He said it was medical stuff. Release forms or something. I don't know. He gave me $100. Said he needed a second witness because the nurse wasn't around. I just stared at her. She started to fidget. "I didn't know it was a house," she added. "I swear, he showed up with some guy, said he was a notary. We signed. They left. That was it." I took a deep breath, watching her face. She wasn't lying. She was just tired, probably broke, and Kevin knew it. "Do you have a copy of what you signed?" I asked. She shook her head. "No. He took everything with him. But I remember the guy had a little seal thing, pressed it onto the paper." "Was his name Devin Clymer?" Her eyes lit up. "Yeah, that's it. You know him?" I nodded slowly. "Not yet, but I will." She looked down at her cigarette, then back at me. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. I didn't know how to answer that. How do you explain what it feels like to stand in front of someone who helped steal your home and know they didn't even realize they were part of it? I left without saying much else. Just thanked her, asked for her number, said I might need to ask a few questions later. She gave it to me without hesitation. She was scared now. She should be. Back in my car, I sat for a long time with the engine off. The neighborhood was noisy, but I couldn't hear any of it. All I could hear was Sharon's voice, the one that used to call Kevin our boy, even when he was screwing up. "Our boy just needs more time," she'd say. I gave him 40 years, and he used that time to build a lie. But now I had a name, I had a witness, and soon I'd have a reason to knock on Devin Clymer's door. Kevin played this like I'd stay quiet, like I'd go away, but he forgot something. I'm not afraid of starting over. I've done it before, and this time I brought the receipts. The name Devin Clymer sounded like someone who sold used boats or tech support scams, not a notary public. But there he was, tucked between a dry cleaner and a payday loan place on Yosemite Avenue, behind a dusty window that read, "Clymer and Associates, Notary, Tax Prep, Legal Forms." I pushed the door open. A bell jingled. Devin looked up from behind the counter. He was younger than I expected. Late 30s maybe, thin, too much hair gel. He had that fake tan that always peeled around the collar. He smiled with practiced friendliness. "Help you?" I walked up slowly and laid the document on the counter between us. "You notarized this." He blinked, glanced down, paused. "Sir, I processed dozens of forms. Look at the date." He glanced again. "September 14th. That's the day I was in a hospital bed. Couldn't walk straight, couldn't see straight, and somehow you watched me sign over my house." He stiffened, but the smile didn't break. "If your son brought proper ID and the forms were—" "I didn't say my son brought me," I cut in. "I said I was in the hospital. And you notarized this at a private home, not a hospital, not my home. Some woman's porch with cigarette burns on the railing." That got him. I saw it. The flicker behind his eyes. The little muscle in his jaw that twitched when the lie started to wobble. "I don't know what to tell you, sir. It was all filed legally, but not ethically and not truthfully." I leaned in. "Devin, I've worked with sheetrockers, roofers, contractors, and foremen for 40 years. You know what they all have in common? They can smell BS from a mile away. And right now, you reek." He looked down, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look," he finally muttered. "The kid paid me. I didn't know the guy in the hospital wasn't the one signing. I thought it was just, I don't know, power of attorney stuff, nothing serious. He paid you to pretend you saw me sign something. That's fraud." Devin paled. Are you taking this to the DA?" "I'm taking this wherever it needs to go. unless you decide to help make it right." He stared at me, his expression shifting from smug to scared. "I didn't know he was stealing a house, man. He just said you were his dad and you gave permission." I didn't reply, just stared him down. You know what's worse than betrayal? Watching a man realize he helped do it for $200 in a lie. That night, I sat alone in the motel again, turned off the light, lay on my back and stared at the water stains on the ceiling. Sharon and I bought our house in 1982. We didn't even have a couch at first, just a mattress on the floor and one of those big metal fans to fight the summer heat. But it was ours. Every nail in the walls, every creaky step, every photo we hung was part of the story we were building. And now it was gone. Not because I failed, but because someone who carried my name thought he could erase it all with a fake smile and a forged pen. But this chapter doesn't end with a signature. It ends with a reckoning. Devin agreed to write a statement, and I'm going to use it, because the next knock won't be on some office door. It's going to be on Kevin's. From across the street, the house looked smaller. Maybe it was the new paint, some pale blue that clashed with the red brick. Maybe it was the strange car in the driveway, or the sound of a dog barking behind the fence. But mostly, it was the way it didn't feel like mine anymore. Kevin stepped out of the car. He was wearing new shoes, expensive ones. He laughed as he walked around to open the passenger door. A woman stepped out, mid-30s, too glamorous for Modesto, long lashes, loud laugh. I'd never seen her before. They walked up the steps together. My steps. He had his hand on the small of her back like he'd done it 100 times. I watched them from the truck, engine off, windows cracked. On that porch, I had rocked Sharon to sleep after her chemo treatments. On that porch, I had taught Kevin how to fix a bicycle chain. He skinned his knuckles. I told him, "Every scar has a lesson." And now here he was, living in a house he stole, laughing like nothing happened. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my hands cramped. My instinct was to get out, walk up, and knock. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I drove to the edge of town, pulled into the gravel lot of a little brick building with a wooden sign. Faith Revival Tabernacle. Pastor Gene was outside, sweeping leaves. He looked up. "Walter?" I hadn't seen him since Sharon's funeral. "Thought I'd find you here," I said. We sat on the bench out front, the kind where the paint peels off on your shirt. I told him everything. The hospital, the deed, the fake signature. Kevin's silence. He didn't interrupt, just nodded. When I finished, he said quietly, "You want justice, Walter, and you deserve it. But be sure you don't confuse it with revenge." I looked at him. "Is there a difference?" He smiled, but it was sad. "One heals, the other just burns." I didn't know how to answer that. Before I left, he handed me a little notebook, Sharon's prayer journal. She'd left it in the pew one Sunday. He'd kept it all this time. I held it like it was made of glass. Back at the motel, I opened my duffel and laid out everything on the bed. A certified copy of the fraudulent deed, Kira's handwritten statement, Devin's signed affidavit, notarized, this time legally, and the journal. On the first page, Sharon had written, "A house is not made of wood and nails, it's made of promises kept." Kevin broke every one. But I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to file. And when the day came, I'd be standing in front of a judge with proof, not pain, because this fight wasn't about getting my house back. It was about making sure he never did this to anyone else, and maybe, just maybe, remembering who I used to be. The law office, was wedged between a vape shop and a daycare, two things that didn't exist when I was raising Kevin. Funny how the world moves on while you're still nursing the damage. Inside, everything was glass and chrome, cold but clean. A young woman stood up from behind the desk. "Mr. Harris?" "Yes, Walter." She shook my hand. Firm grip. No nonsense. "I'm Maribel Soto. Please sit." We sat in a small conference room with frosted windows. She pulled out a yellow legal pad and a blue pen. "Tell me everything. Start from the hospital." I did. Again. By now, the story came out like a rehearsed confession. The stroke, the paper, Kevin's soft voice while I was half-drugged, the motel, Kira, Devon, the photocopies. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded. "You have a case." Those 4 words nearly broke me. She continued. "It's deed fraud. He took advantage of diminished capacity. There's potential elder abuse here, too. We'll file for rescission of transfer and emergency injunction to prevent sale or refinance, but we need to move fast." I swallowed. "What's the risk?" She leaned back. "He'll deny everything. Say you gave him permission. Say you were lucid. If he gets a lawyer, they'll argue you're just bitter and confused. Judges are cautious with family disputes, but the notary affidavit changes things. That's key." I nodded. She pulled a retainer agreement from a drawer. "My rate is fair. I'll work with you on payments." I didn't even ask how much. I signed. Because this wasn't about money. This was about memory, about respect, about not dying as a footnote in someone else's fake story. She handed me a copy and said, "We start today. First thing I'm doing is sending a cease and desist to your son. He'll get it in 2 days." I stood slowly. My knees ached, but my spine was straight. "Thank you," I said. Outside, the afternoon sun was brutal, but for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel small. I wasn't just an old man sleeping in a motel room anymore. I was a plaintiff. And Kevin? Kevin was about to get mail he never saw coming. The phone rang at 6:14 p.m. Unknown number. I knew who it was before I even picked up. "Hello?" Silence. Then, "Dad?" That voice, the same one that used to ask me to check under the bed for monsters, now it sounded different, hollow, rehearsed. "I got some letter from a lawyer," Kevin said. "What the hell is going on?" I took a breath. "You know exactly what's going on. You're making a mistake, a big one." "No, son. I made the mistake a month ago, when I trusted you." He laughed. Cold. "Dad, come on. You were in the hospital. You were saying weird things. You told me you wanted me to handle the bills, remember? I thought I was helping. You stole my house." He paused. "It's not like that. You're not in a position to manage." "I managed it just fine for 40 years. Until you decided you needed more than your allowance." His voice changed, sharp, defensive. "This is insane. You're letting some lawyer manipulate you. I'm letting the law do what it's supposed to do, protect people from snakes who wear their father's name." More silence. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "If you fight me on this, it's going to get ugly. You sure you want that?" I almost laughed. I was a union electrician during the Reagan years. I've fought uglier. He didn't like that. "I don't want to do this, Dad," he said, softer now, like he was offering peace. "You already did it," I replied. "And now it's my turn." I hung up before he could say anything else. Then I sat on the edge of the bed, that stained, lumpy motel mattress, and just let the silence fill the room. Not grief this time, not fear, just the deep, steady breath of a man who knows he's not alone in the fight anymore. That night, I moved out. Old buddy from the union, Leroy, had a spare room and a stronger handshake than most men half his age. "You stay here long as you need," he said. "Ain't no way you're finishing this battle from a motel." I brought my duffel bag inside, laid the court documents on the nightstand, hung Sharon's prayer journal on the wall like a photo frame. Because this wasn't just about getting the house back. This was about reclaiming the kind of man I used to be. And Kevin? Kevin just realized he's not the only one who can make a move. It's my board now. The knock came around 7:30 p.m. Leroy was out back fixing something on his truck. I opened the door expecting a delivery. It was Lydia, Kevin's ex-wife. She looked thinner than I remembered, hair pulled back tight, eyes tired. "Mr. Harris," she said. "Can I come in for a second?" I stepped aside. She walked into the living room, glanced around at Leroy's half-painted walls and the old recliner I'd claimed as my own. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. "I heard what Kevin did. Through a mutual friend. I figured, you should have this." She handed it to me. I opened it slowly. Inside, printed screenshots of a text thread where Kevin bragged to a friend about getting the house without a fight. A bank statement showing a sudden deposit into his account the same week the deed was filed. And a USB drive. "What's on this?" I asked. "A voicemail he left me 6 months ago," she said. "Drunk, rambling, saying how easy it is to convince old people to sign things if you just wait until they're too tired to read." She sat down. Her hands were shaking. "I was married to him for 5 years," she said. "He lied about everything. Had a second credit card I didn't know about. Tried to put our son's social security number on a car loan. I left when I found out, but I never thought he'd go after you." I didn't know what to say. Sometimes the deepest wounds aren't from the act. They're from realizing the person was always capable of it. "I kept this stuff in case he ever tried to come after me," she said. "But I think you need it more." I nodded slowly. She stood. "Good luck, Mr. Harris. And if you ever need me to say this under oath, I will." I walked her to the door, watched her drive away in an old gray sedan with a car seat in the back. Back inside, I sat down with that envelope in my lap. Heavy, but not from the paper, from the truth inside it. Kevin didn't just cross a line, he burned the whole bridge, with me, with her, with anyone who ever tried to love him. But he made one mistake. He left a trail, and now that trail had names, dates, screenshots, and a voice. Next week, we'd be in court for the emergency injunction, and I wasn't walking in there alone. I was bringing the truth with me, in triplicate. The courthouse smelled like floor polish and fear. I hadn't been in one since my last jury duty in 1998. Back then I fell asleep during the opening arguments and got excused by noon. This time I was wide awake. Maribel walked beside me, crisp gray suit, folders under her arm, eyes sharp as a scalpel. I had my old navy blue suit on. Sharon used to call it my dignity jacket. Still fit, mostly. We sat on the left side. Lydia slipped in quietly behind us. Didn't say anything, just gave me a small nod. Kevin showed up 10 minutes late. Tan blazer, new haircut, that same swagger he'd used in high school to get out of detention. He walked like he thought the judge would be impressed. He didn't look at me. Not once. The hearing started. Maribel stood and spoke first. Calm. Precise. She handed over the forged deed, the notarized statement from Devon, Kira's affidavit, and a flash drive with Lydia's voicemail. The clerk played the voicemail out loud in the courtroom. Kevin's voice slurred. "If you wait long enough, old folks'll sign anything. Just need to make it look official. Get the right stamp. Boom. Free house." The words hung in the air like smoke. Kevin's lawyer, some guy in an ill-fitting suit, objected, but the judge allowed it. Then came the screenshots, the bank records, the date discrepancies, every piece stacked like bricks until the wall was too high to climb over. Kevin sat back, arms crossed, jaw tight. No more smirk. The judge, a silver-haired woman with half glasses and a voice like gravel, looked at me directly. "Mr. Harris, did you intend to transfer ownership of your home to your son on September 14th? I stood. "No, Your Honor. I was recovering from a stroke. I don't even remember signing anything. But I remember the feeling of waking up and realizing my key didn't work anymore." She nodded slowly. "I believe you." She turned to Kevin. "Mr. Harris, based on the evidence, I am granting the emergency injunction. You are prohibited from selling, leasing, or altering the property in any way until this case is resolved at trial. Furthermore, any financial transactions tied to the house are frozen as of today." Kevin's lawyer tried to interject. "Denied," she said flatly. I sat back down, knees weak, but heart steady. For the first time since this all began, the world had tilted back toward level. Outside the courthouse, Kevin stormed past me without a word. Lydia watched him go, arms crossed, then turned to me. "He won't go down easy," she said. "I don't need easy," I replied. "I just need true." That night I sat in Leroy's recliner and read the court order 3 times. Was it over? No. The trial was still ahead. But for the first time in weeks, I slept without checking the lock on the door, because I wasn't the one hiding anymore. Kevin was. It started with a voicemail from an old church buddy. "Hey, Walt, I don't know what's going on between you and Kevin, but maybe you should talk to him. Life's short, you know." Then came the Facebook posts. Vague ones. "Some people forget who raised them, but still feel entitled to play victim." Followed by messages from numbers I didn't know. "He's your son. Doesn't that mean something?" Yeah, it does. It means I raised someone who learned how to weaponize guilt like a pro. I ignored the calls, deleted the messages, but it got under my skin anyway. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just hurt once, it echoes. Leroy noticed. "You're walking like your boots are full of bricks," he said one morning. I didn't answer. That evening, Lydia invited me to a little diner off Route 99, just pancakes and coffee, no pity, just conversation. "He's spinning it," she said, tearing a napkin into tiny strips. "Telling people you're confused, that you snapped after the hospital. Is anyone buying it? People like a good drama, especially when it's not theirs." I stirred my coffee. He always did know how to change the story halfway through. She nodded. "He used to tell my parents I was bipolar, that's why I cried so much, said I had mood swings. Meanwhile, he was draining our savings behind my back." I looked at her. "Why'd you stay so long?" She sighed. "Because I wanted the version of him that only existed in the beginning. The sweet one. The one who said he wanted a family." "That's the version I raised," I said quietly, or thought I did. We didn't talk much after that, just finished our pancakes. But when we left, she put her hand on my arm. "You're not crazy, Walter. And you're not alone in this. Back at Leroy's, I opened a new spiral notebook, started listing everything we'd need for trial. Timeline of the deed filing, witnesses willing to testify, financial records, Sharon's journal marked with notes about Kevin's behavior before she passed. Every piece of paper was a small shovel. I wasn't just digging out the truth, I was burying the lie. Kevin could play the victim online. He could weaponize nostalgia and send old photos of me holding him at a picnic in 1993. But a picture doesn't erase a crime, and in court, stories get replaced with facts. He was about to learn that the hard way. The email came from Maribel late Thursday night. Subject line: attempted property transfer, blocked. Kevin had tried to list the house through a shady out-of-town buyer, some LLC shell. Probably figured he could get cash under the table before the case hit trial, but the injunction held. The title company flagged it, froze the process. When I read the email, I didn't feel rage. I felt pity, not for Kevin, for the boy he used to be, the one who made forts in the backyard with sticks and a tarp, the one who once cried when I killed a snake because he just wanted to watch it slither. That boy's gone, replaced by a man who'd sell his father's roof to buy another lie. I spent that weekend preparing. Maribel had me run through my testimony 3 times. She played devil's advocate. What if the judge asks why you signed it? What if Kevin claims you gave verbal consent? I answered every question with the same truth. I trusted my son, and he used my body's weakness as an opportunity to steal. We organized documents in color-coded binders, witness statements, medical reports, the timeline, Devin's affidavit, Lydia's voicemail, even Sharon's journal, just 1 page photocopied where she wrote, "Kevin's ambition scares me. He looks at people like they're steps." That night, I lay in Leroy's spare room with the windows cracked, cool air coming through the screen. I stared at the ceiling and thought about 1982, the day we got the keys. Sharon cried on the porch. I carried her over the threshold like it was a palace. We didn't have furniture yet, just a mattress, a box of old records, and a radio. But we were kings. And now, all these years later, I'm fighting not for the house itself, but for what it stood for: stability, sacrifice, memory. Kevin thinks he's the heir to that history, but inheritance isn't automatic. It's earned, and come trial, he'll have to answer for what he's done. Not just to me, but to every memory still echoing in those walls. If this ends in a courtroom, I'll be the one standing. October 23rd. I woke before the alarm. Didn't need it. My body knew. Trial day. I dressed slow. Same navy suit, clean shirt. Leroy pressed it for me the night before. He slapped my shoulder on the way out. "Bring the roof down," he said. Maribel met me at the courthouse, folder in hand. No small talk, just a quiet nod. Kevin was already inside, seated at the defense table with a smarmy-looking lawyer who wore cufflinks like armor. Kevin wore a navy blazer, probably borrowed. No tie, tried to look relaxed. He didn't. The judge entered. Same silver-haired woman from the injunction hearing, calm, direct, no patience for theatrics. Maribel began. She told a story, not with tears, not with rage, with facts. "Mr. Harris," she said, "suffered a minor stroke. During his recovery, his son approached him under the guise of financial help. While Walter was still medicated and disoriented, he was handed a deed. That document transferred his home, his only major asset, to his son's name. No legal consultation, no disclosure, no comprehension, just betrayal. Kevin's lawyer rose with a smirk. Mr. Harris is 68. Strokes are traumatic. Memories fade. Isn't it possible he simply forgot giving consent? Isn't it likely, Your Honor, that this is a regretted gift? Then it was my turn. I stood, swore my oath, and told the truth. About the hospital, about Kevin's soft words, about the porch, the locks, the motel, the paper trail. I didn't raise my voice, didn't plead. I just said, I taught my son how to tie his shoes, how to patch a tire, how to keep his word. I never thought I'd have to teach him not to steal. Then Lydia took the stand. She didn't look at Kevin once. She played the voicemail. Kevin's voice echoed across the courtroom. Old folks'll sign anything if you catch them at the right time. The judge didn't blink. Kevin stood up. That's out of context. The judge raised a hand. Sit down. He did. The courtroom was silent. When we recessed for lunch, I stepped out into the sun, pulled my coat tighter. The air had turned, not cold, just clearer. Maribel stood beside me, sipping coffee. You were perfect, she said. I nodded. Across the courtyard, Kevin lit a cigarette with shaking hands. His world was cracking, and mine, the one he tried to bulldoze, was still standing. Tomorrow we'd return for closing arguments. But the verdict, I could already feel it moving. Day 2. I didn't sleep much. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew how close we were. When we walked into that courtroom, the air was different. Kevin's shoulders were lower, his jaw tighter, even his lawyer seemed smaller. Maribel stood. Her voice didn't tremble once. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, she began, this is not a case of miscommunication. This is not a misunderstanding. This is calculated deceit. Walter Harris trusted his son, not with money, not with power, but with love, with the assumption that a child would protect, not plunder. She paced slowly. Kevin Harris took advantage of illness. He used trust as a weapon, and he forged a signature not just on paper, but on a life. Then she rested. Kevin's lawyer stood up, tried everything, painted me as confused, old, embarrassed, claimed I was pressured by outsiders, that Lydia had personal motives, that the notary must have been coerced. The judge didn't interrupt him. She just wrote. And when it was over, she looked at us, all of us, and said, "This court will deliberate. I'll return with a ruling tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Gavel dropped. I exhaled. Outside, the air had that October edge, cool, sharp, full of change. I sat on the courthouse steps, tie loosened, coat open. People passed me without knowing the war I'd just walked through. And in that moment, I heard Sharon in my head. You've always been the kind of man who stands back up, Walter, no matter how many times you're knocked down. She wasn't wrong. Behind me, 2 days of testimony, truth, and pain. Ahead of me, one ruling. But here, right here on these steps, I realized something. Even if I lost, he didn't win. Because I told the truth, in public, under oath, with my spine straight and my eyes forward. And no son, no thief, could take that away. October 24th, 10 o'clock a.m. I arrived early, sat in the hallway outside courtroom 3B with a styrofoam cup of coffee, and silence in my bones. Lydia showed up. Maribel, too. Leroy called that morning and said, "Win or lose, you stood up like a man ought to." Kevin came in late, again. Same blazer, same look. But this time, he wouldn't meet my eyes. The judge entered. Everyone stood. She flipped through her notes, took her time. I felt my pulse in my fingertips. "Mr. Harris," she said, looking at me, "you brought this case with evidence, testimony, and remarkable dignity." She turned to Kevin. "Mr. Harris, Jr., your conduct demonstrates clear intent to defraud. The court finds the deed transfer invalid. Full rescission is granted. Property rights returned to the plaintiff, effective immediately." I didn't move. She continued, "Furthermore, this court is referring the matter to the district attorney for further investigation under civil fraud statutes. Sanctions will be issued." No applause, just silence. I closed my eyes for a second, not to celebrate, to breathe. Outside, the wind had picked up. Crisp leaves skittered across the courthouse plaza. Lydia hugged me. Maribel smiled. Even the bailiff gave me a quiet nod. Kevin walked right past me. Not a word, no apology, no glance. Just gone. I didn't follow. Instead, I drove to the house, parked across the street. Same spot I'd watched from before. The tree in the front yard, the one Sharon planted our second year, had turned gold. Its leaves shimmered like coins in the breeze. I didn't get out of the truck, didn't go inside. Not yet. Because reclaiming a house isn't the same as returning home. There's grief to unpack first, and memory to rebuild. But standing there, I finally felt something I hadn't in a long, long time. Stillness. Justice had spoken. And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't surviving. I was whole. I waited 3 days. Then I unlocked the door. The key turned slower than I remembered, or maybe my hand just hesitated. The house smelled like dust and disuse, but beneath that, something else. Sharon's lavender sachets, still faint, still clinging. I stepped inside. The silence hit like a wave. The living room was different. Kevin had moved the couch, replaced the curtains, mounted a TV on the wall where our wedding photo used to hang, but the floor still creaked in the same spot. The sunlight still poured through the east window just after noon. Some things, the real things, can't be undone. I walked room to room, slow, like visiting an old friend after years apart. The kitchen still had our ceramic rooster timer, cracked but working. The dent in the sink from when Kevin dropped a pot when he was 12, still there. Our bedroom. He hadn't touched it. Her shawl still hung on the closet door. Her hairbrush still on the dresser. Dust covered, but waiting. I sat on the bed, didn't cry, didn't rage, just breathed. She built this house with me, not with bricks, but with meals, laughter, Sunday songs, whispered arguments, and warm coffee. This wasn't just a structure, it was her last gift. Kevin tried to take it, but he couldn't take her echo. I stood and opened all the windows, let the wind move through like a cleansing prayer. Then I started cleaning, slowly, intentionally. I threw out what didn't belong. I opened every drawer. I swept every corner. Not because I needed to, because I was ready. This house wasn't haunted. It was healing. And so was I. The mail started coming again. Not the bills. Those had always found me. But real mail. Letters from friends. Cards from old co-workers. Even a pie from the McMillans 2 doors down. I didn't know what to say, their note read, "but we're glad you're home." Home. I mowed the lawn, trimmed the hedges, dug out Sharon's old gardening gloves, and started pulling weeds from the flower bed she loved most. Maribel called once a week just to update me. "The fraud referral's moving forward," she said. "Might not be quick, but it's happening." I thanked her. Kevin never reached out again. I don't know if he moved. Don't care. His silence is a relief. Lydia dropped by once, just to see the place. She stood in the kitchen, touching the counter. "You know, he used to tell me this place felt too small for him." I smiled. Some men mistake roots for chains. We didn't talk long, didn't need to. Pastor Jean came over the following Sunday. We didn't pray. Just sat on the porch and drank weak coffee like we used to. "You look lighter," he said. "I feel it." Later that week, I was dusting Sharon's old bookshelf and found something wedged behind her nightstand Bible, a folded piece of stationery. It was my handwriting, a note I'd written her years ago. No occasion, just a Tuesday kind of love. "If I go before you, plant something, anything. A tree, a flower, a vine. So when I'm gone, part of me keeps growing here." I read it 3 times, and I cried for the first time in a long time, not out of loss, out of gratitude, because she had planted something, and even after everything, it was still blooming. I hadn't been back since the headstone was set. October 30th. Crisp morning. Sky like glass. The kind of blue Sharon always said reminded her of Oregon. I brought her favorite, white tulips, even though they'd wilt by nightfall. I stood there a long time, hands in pockets, words stuck somewhere between my lungs and my throat. But eventually, I found them. "They tried to take it," I said softly. "Everything we built, the home, the memories, even the dignity." I paused. "But they couldn't. You were too strong for that." A breeze lifted the edge of my coat. "I miss you. Every morning. Every time I sit at the table and there's only one cup. Every night I walk past the spot where you used to read." I knelt and placed the tulips against the base of the stone. "But I'm still here, and the house is still ours, and your voice, it never left." I sat in silence for a while. Then, when the wind picked up, I stood and turned back toward the truck. That afternoon, I planted a sapling in the front yard. Sharon always wanted a second tree. Said it would balance the porch view. I chose a red maple, bright, stubborn, the kind that clings to its leaves longer than most. As I shoveled, I remembered her laughter, the way she wiped her hands on her jeans after gardening, the way she said, "Roots matter more than paint." And I knew this story wasn't about a house, it was about love, the kind that survives theft, silence, even death. And in that soil, it begins again.